Hi there. Today I want to talk about the myths of family estrangement. I've compiled 12 of them for you, and I think you might be surprised as I go from the most common to the least. So, my name is Jana. I'm 67 years old, almost 68, and I am estranged from my entire family. I am here to create a community of respect and support because I know all too well the pain and confusion that comes from estrangement. You are not alone. So, I have a lot of information to give you, and I have highlighted each myth in my description for easy reference if you're interested in a particular one. So let's get started. It's always the parent's fault myth. I find this one very interesting. In my own family situation, my 3 adult daughters who I'm estranged from, it was always, well, you did this or you didn't do that, placing all the blame on me. And if you take a look at online support groups, if you look in the groups comprised of adult estranged children, I have never seen any of them ever taking accountability for their part in the situation. But in contrast, if you look in the groups of adult estranged parents, let me get this right, estranged parents of adult children, they are usually always the first one to take full or at the very least partial accountability. And that lends itself to the myth that it's always the parent's fault. It's like we as parents are not permitted to point out their shortcomings. Even if we simply tell our story, it's viewed as being our fault because it's looked upon as placing blame. And this myth is not limited to parents by any means. What about siblings? I mean, look at my family. It was like one brother was like, "How dare you?" when I simply liked a social media post. And another walked away from me simply for having a different political view than him. And again, it was viewed as my fault. The truth is, estrangement is not composed of one-sided blame. It's rarely that simple. Why are people so quick to blame? It's complex. We shouldn't be blaming each other because that won't ever help the situation. The second myth I'd like to talk about is the estrangement is shameful myth. And yes, I am looking at some notes because I'm still trying to get comfortable here. I'm working on it, but I have to refer to my little outline. But I think many people view estrangement as being shameful, and I think it's especially viewed that way if you are estranged from your adult children. It seems to be more shameful to be estranged from your adult children than to other family members. And then in my case, being estranged from my entire family, that's even viewed as even more shameful. One niece of mine actually made a public post on my private Facebook page, and I quote, "You are an embarrassment to our family," unquote. So this even goes along with the first myth that we've talked about, which is blame. It's kind of like, well, how could you let that happen? And it implies shame and fault. But none of us should feel ashamed or embarrassed or even humiliated, which is another word that I hear. The truth is, estrangement is not shameful, nor is it embarrassing. It's taking a step back to protect your peace and emotional health. It's courageous. It's called self-respect in action. Shame is something that I still struggle with, something I'm still working on. I think we, especially as estranged parents, internalize that feeling. But my worth should not be defined by somebody else's approval, even family. We need to know that it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay not to have been a perfect parent or a perfect sibling or even the perfect adult child, because shame can go both ways, you know, and an estranged adult child might feel shame being estranged from a parent who is still living. I think it comes back to your situation and taking accountability and then moving forward for whatever your situation is. Myth number 3, estrangement hardly ever happens. I talked more about that in my video last week called Family Estrangement, Who It Affects and Why It Happens. I've been dealing with estrangement way back to the 1980s, and at that time I never thought anything of it in terms of how rare or common it might be, maybe subconsciously. Even in the year 2016, when my estrangements from my adult daughters happened, it was a subconscious thought, and it wasn't actually till a couple of years after that that I actually heard about the first person that I kind of knew who was estranged from an adult child. It's really only been the last year or so when I joined some Facebook support groups for estranged adult parents that I realized how very common it was. I mean, there are a lot of groups on Facebook, and each of these groups have thousands of estranged parents and family members, and then that's just Facebook, and I'm sure there's other groups on other social media. The truth is that there are millions of people in this world who are facing estrangement. It is not a rare thing. Of course, that doesn't make it any easier or less painful, but it does help us to know that we are not alone. It's a common challenge that many people face, and there is nothing shameful about it. The big fight myth. I think there's the common assumption of what happened when you tell somebody about your estrangement. And when they ask that, I think they're expecting to hear some kind of story like, well, I was supposed to babysit my grandchild, but my husband had a medical emergency and I had to take him to the hospital, And that caused my adult child to become upset with me and quit speaking to me. But the truth is that type of thing is often the catalyst for what happened, and it's rarely about that. It's usually more complex than that. In my family, back in the 1980s with my youngest brother, it did actually happen over one event. That letter that I talked about in that video, and I'll link that up here if you haven't seen it. This is the letter that I allowed my 2 school-age daughters to write to him when they wanted to express their disappointment over something he had done. He got very angry over that letter, and as a result, didn't speak to me actually for decades. I mean, I would see him maybe a couple times over the years, and it was just like, really weird. But we were estranged for decades up until like a year or so to go, which I'll get to here in a minute. Judging by some of the comments that I received when I talked about this in my story about my brothers, people judge and place the blame on me for that situation. But in reflecting upon it, I do not feel that one incident was the thing that caused our estrangement. I now believe it goes way back to the family narrative about me and my family. And if it wouldn't have been that one thing, it would have been something else. There seemed to be some confusion in that last video about the contents of that letter and why I allowed my girls to write it. If you'd like clarity over that, just let me know in the comments, and I'll just keep moving on because I want to keep this video on topic. But, my main point is I don't believe that letter was the direct cause of our estrangement. Like I just said, I feel like if it wasn't that, it would have been something else. When he approached me to try to reconnect a year ago, then there was something else that I did that displeased him and made the reconnection off the table, and our estrangement is now permanent. With the rest of my family, there haven't been any real single events that have caused the estrangement, just smaller things that seem to have enhanced the feelings they had already that I'm the bad one. So let me just add here that I'm not trying to blow off any of their feelings, that I'm sure they have some valid points and everybody's feelings are valid. I fully recognize that they might have some legitimate concerns, but I was not a bad parent, ever. I've made mistakes, but I was not a bad parent. I was not a bad sister, any of that. I'm just trying to say that estrangement is usually a accumulation of things, and it's not this one single blow up. How about the all or nothing estrangement myth? So the myth is you must fully cut contact to count as being estranged. And this is one thing that I never considered until recently, is this concept of being partially estranged. And I'm not sure how to explain that other than, if you just feel that disconnect from somebody in your family, maybe you're seeing them less often and they're making excuses for not getting together, you're hearing from them less often, maybe they don't respond to your texts and your phone calls, you have that feeling of walking on eggshells with them. Those would all be examples of being partially estranged. And the truth is that still counts as being estranged, no matter how you look at it. And that is what happened between me and my youngest daughter. We were still speaking, and for a couple of years there was a definite disconnect feeling there, and I know that she felt it on her end also, as evidenced by the one comment she made saying that she felt I was in a bubble, without explanation. With her, the get-togethers stopped, the calls and texts dwindled on both sides to just very little bit. There was no single event that caused this. Ultimately, with my youngest daughter, she began to take bits and pieces to scrutinize my own actions to justify her disrespect of me, just as her sisters were. For example, I honored her request of not putting her in the middle between the estrangement between me and her sisters, but yet every time they would decide to gossip about me, she would listen to them and support them on that. All the while, at the same time, telling me things like, quote, "I don't think you did anything bad," or she might have said wrong. It was either bad or wrong. Just like what my brother did long ago. She took things that I either did or didn't do and twisted it somehow into proof that I wasn't worthy. And, is with my entire family is dang if I do, dang if I don't. So estrangement is real. The pain is real, no matter what form it takes. If you feel it, your feelings are valid. You are in control of how you handle it. We are all different. If you choose to be okay with partial contact, walking on eggshells and feeling that disconnect, then you do you. That is okay. No judgment here from me. If you choose to sever ties completely, that is also okay. You ultimately have to do what is best for you, for your own peace and your own mental health. It's really important that you keep your authenticity and be real to yourself. The guaranteed regret myth. And I'm just taking a moment here. I'm kind of laughing because, as you all know, I'm still new to this YouTube thing, and I'm noticing there's glare on my glasses, so I keep trying to experiment with where to film and how to film and stuff, and I see if I turn my face this way, the glare goes away. If I go straight, there's glare. I can go all the way this way, or maybe if I move back, way back, or tip my head down, I'm not sure. So just don't mind me with the glasses glare. trying to keep my eye on the camera, and if I keep looking away, it's partially because of my little outline to keep on track here, and it's partially because of this glasses glare. But back to this regret. The myth that you're going to regret it forever if you don't reconcile. And I find this one really interesting because I don't know how many times I've heard people say, well, you need to apologize before it's too late. But what they're really referring to is you better do it before one of you passes away, because then you'll be sorry and then you'll regret it. So let's talk about regret. There's healthy regret, and then there's unhealthy regret. With healthy regret, that's more about reflection and changing your ways and learning, making better choices. With unhealthy regret, that's more like holding on, feeling sorry for yourself, and just living with your pain. But the truth is, not everyone experiences regret. Many people feel peace in honoring their boundaries. This is something that I've given some thought to, like, when I pass away, is anybody in my family going to feel regret or feel sorry for how they treated me? My answer to that is I honestly don't think so. I honestly believe that they just don't care. From my end, I am never ever going to regret being authentic, honest, and real and true to myself. If that means I have to lose my family relations over being fake, somebody who I'm not, then that's just not worth it to me. The parent must apologize first myth. And this is another myth that I've heard a lot. They say, you're the mom, so you should apologize. And I think that's ridiculous. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that, and it can feel very exhausting to feel like you have the sole responsibility to fix the relationship. In my family, I definitely felt that pressure, not only from my estranged daughters, but from the rest of my family. I'm the family scapegoat, and as such, I don't believe that any apology on my part would make a difference. And in fact, I've been there, done that, tried that. It doesn't work. It doesn't work when there's a family narrative, a solid family narrative in place, with nobody taking accountability about what is going on. And the truth is that the words and actions of saying I apologize are not relevant. What is relevant is acknowledging wrongdoing on your own part and taking accountability for whatever you've done, and being respectful and offering a sincere apology. And what good is an apology just for the sake of saying that? You've always heard of the little child who does something naughty, and the parent's like, apologize, Johnny, just apologize right now. Well, if the kid doesn't understand what they've done, how is that apology meaningful at all? Apologies need to be mutual and sincere, and not dictated by role just because you're the parent. Adult children are just that. They're adults. And just because they have an estranged parent doesn't mean they should be off the hook from their own accountability. Okay, here I go. I closed the curtains in this room and I don't seem to have that glare anymore. I had left them open so the video wouldn't be dark, so hopefully this isn't bad. Let's move on to myth number 8, and this is the blanket apology myth. And this one goes along with the one that we just talked about, that the parent should always be the one to apologize. The blanket apology is when you just apologize just for the sake of apologizing, just for the sake of reconnecting and moving on without ever knowing what you truly did to cause the other person's estrangement from you. Many of us truly do not know what caused the estrangement, either because our children can't tell us or they won't tell us, despite the judgment from people who say things like, well, you should know, but we're not mind readers. They'll go on to say, well, you should just apologize anyway. But I say, well, then that's not a sincere apology, right? Who wants an apology from somebody who doesn't mean it? And if you do give a blanket apology, what does that solve? Does that help anything? Not really, because you still want to be aware of what you did, and if you're not aware, you can't fix it. I mean, isn't the goal here in reconciliation to fix things, not just like to shove it under the rug and pretend nothing ever happened? The truth is that a blanket apology is not a repair, it's a submission. Some people try to guilt you into doing it, that you have to do it or else you're going to lose the relationship. But is that being fair, true, honest, and authentic to yourself? I know that many parents do offer blanket apologies, and then they proceed to walk on eggshells to protect the peace. In my family, I have given a few apologies, and every time I did so, I was fully aware of what I had done, and I had taken accountability for it. It didn't matter to me if I felt I was right or wrong in whatever the bad thing that I did. What was important to me was their feelings, and just the sincere acknowledgement of hurting their feelings. But in my case, it never helped. Not once. Did any of my family ever give me an apology? I think after decades and decades, there was only one instance with one family member who did give me an apology for something that was done on their behalf, took accountability for that, and then I mistakenly thought that that might mean that their awareness would lead to a reconciliation, but nope. I am not saying that in your case you should not offer an apology, even if you are aware and sincere. I'm just saying in my personal case, it hasn't helped, and I believe that's because I'm the family scapegoat. The something must be wrong with me myth. I've included this particular myth because it's something that I've heard from in my comments. I've read about it in the comments from other creators who talk about this same subject, and I've heard it from my own family. I find this to be a very judgmental thing to say. And most of them say it without any awareness of whether or not you have even actually had therapy. I can assume that when somebody says get therapy or you should work on yourself, that what they are really saying is that something must be wrong with you. And I find that very insulting. And it's back to the blame thing. They want to blame you. And it's evidence by the fact that if you respond and say, well, I have had therapy and it helped, they then say, well, you must have had a bad therapist. So I find that very comical. If these people truly cared, they would pose it as a question, like, have you tried therapy? The truth is that therapy can support healing, but estrangement doesn't mean that you're broken or flawed. And if you are truly broken, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. That's such a mental health stigma. I personally feel that therapy can be great for everybody. And yes, good therapy. Finding a good therapist can be very beneficial. I've always believed strongly in transparency, and my first experience with therapy personally was during my marriage to my ex-husband, whom I was married to for 25 years and is the father of all of my children. I found therapy to be very beneficial in setting boundaries and getting out of a toxic situation. And it also helped me set boundaries with my own mother. Since then, I've had therapy a couple other times, the most recent just a couple years ago. And again, I found it very helpful. I have learned self-boundaries. Actually have this workbook that was very eye-opening, and I will link that book in my description if you're interested in something like that. But here's the thing, I never went to therapy with the goal of fixing the flaw in me. Therapy isn't about erasing who you are. It's about understanding and strengthening yourself. So many myths. Estrangement can be such a heavy subject. I thought we would take a very brief break before proceeding on with my final 3 myths. So I really love wildlife. I hope you do too. And if so, I hope you enjoy this 20-second clip of this bear we encountered in eastern Tennessee on our recent summer road trip. I hope you enjoyed that bear. That's an encounter that I'm still talking about, and I'm still not over, which brings me to myth number 10, that if I'm still talking about it, I must not be over it. But in all seriousness, many times during the past few months, as I've learned to open up and talk about my family estrangement, I've heard things like, move on, get over it. And they're assuming that because I'm talking now that I must not be over it. But they are assuming wrong. In another video I did recently, I talked in depth about why I'm speaking publicly, and I'll put that link right up here for you. The truth is that talking about it can mean that you have found the mind space to help others. I feel like I'm now in a good enough place to offer some support to others in similar situations. And I have heard things like, well, you're making it worse by talking. And if your family sees this, you've ruined any chance for reconciliation. But the thing I want you all to know is that I'm not here to get anybody's approval, including my family. And I'm not looking for reconciliation. My family is going to have to accept me for who I am in order for that to happen. And that's one of my self-boundaries. And those who find value in my words can become part of this supportive community. I am not going to say that I'm completely healed. I don't know how you would ever heal from being estranged from your own children, but you do learn to live with it and accept it like I have done. I occasionally have bad days. I'm human. I'm not perfect. I have found joy in my life, in my hobbies and activities that I have going on in my life. I have found peace. I've always loved helping others. That's been a huge passion of mine. That is the main reason I'm here, maybe the only reason. I'm no longer afraid to speak out. I lost my voice for decades, and I have a voice, and this platform is giving me that voice, and in turn it's enabling me to support and help others. Being over something does not mean silence. You're allowed to talk about it. You're allowed to talk about it. Myth number 11, the common denominator myth. This is another thing I talked about in a recent video. Let's see the name of that video. Family estrangement. Am I the common denominator in my toxic family? That's something that I've gotten a lot of since I'm estranged from my entire family and have begun speaking out about it. On the surface, it would appear that since I'm the only one, the common denominator, and it's all my fault, the problem is me. But I think it's wise to take a step back and look at the bigger picture before judging someone. Since I went into depth about this subject on that other video, that would be too much to repeat here. If you're interested, please go take a look at that video. The truth is that patterns of dysfunction can run deep within families. And my family has a long-standing toxic family narrative that goes way back to my mother's childhood and possibly even before that. It was one that was passed on to me. And that doesn't make me the one to be blamed automatically. It doesn't make me flawed or the problem. It has, coming to this realization has given me a lot of clarity and insight and peace over the situation. There are some in my family who talk about changing this narrative for future generations, for their children. And I find that really ironic because simply the fact of them saying that means they acknowledge that there is indeed a narrative in our family. And then beyond that, if they truly want to change for future generations, then why are they modeling exclusion behavior when it comes to me to their own children? Okay, we are finally to myth number 12, the last one I have for you today, and this is the mutual accountability myth. And I know I've already addressed the accountability thing a little bit previously, but when I talk about this myth, I'm more talking in terms of disrespect. Some people seem to think that if an adult child feels any type of certain negative way towards you, that it's okay for them to be rude and disrespectful. But is it? The parent is expected to just sit back, take it, be silent, and heaven forbid that we call out any of their behavior, because that would just give them, give them the encouragement to be even more disrespectful. And this doesn't even just happen with adult children, but with siblings and other family members. Someone might feel some such way over something you say or do, and they just feel they're entitled to be disrespectful. That doesn't erase the need for mutual accountability. All that does is fuel the fire. The truth is, respect and accountability do matter. Boundaries apply to everyone. I think there is some confusion around respect, that some people think that if you are being disrespectful yourself, that it's okay to be disrespectful back. And I want to share a quick personal example about mutual respect. I sometimes post my political opinions on my private Facebook page. A couple of family members responded disrespectfully, even after I explained that I wasn't trying to offend them. They then turned it around and said that I was being disrespectful simply by posting. Here's the thing, expressing my opinion in my own personal space is not disrespectful. Disagreement doesn't give anybody the right to insult me. I set a clear boundary that disrespect isn't okay, and that's what mutual accountability looks like. Respect is not about agreeing. It's about treating each other decently, even when you disagree. Well, we made it to the end. I hope you're still with me. I hope you got some insight from one or more of these myths. There are plenty of more myths out there. I'd love to hear from you. Which myth surprised you the most? Are there any others that you've encountered in your own situations? I want to thank you so much for being here, listening to me, watching and spending time with me. If you found this helpful, please consider subscribing and giving the video a like and sharing it with somebody you feel might get some value from it. And just remember that family dynamics are complex. You're not alone in navigating them. Stay kind to yourself, authentic to yourself, stay true to yourself, and I'm here for you. Thank you again. I appreciate every single one of you, and I will see you in the next video.